In this video, we're going to see how to get started with Jupyter Notebook inside of GitHub Codespaces. So first, we installed the Jupyter extension in the last video. So this added some commands to the command palette in GitHub Codespaces. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-P, again, Command-Shift-P on the Mac, and I'm going to search for Jupyter. Now, Jupyter is spelled with a Y instead of an I. And you're going to see this command here for create a new Jupyter notebook. So click that and you're going to see something like this come up. So before I can use a Jupyter notebook in GitHub Codespaces, I need to install a Python package called ipykernel. So I can say pip install ipykernel. And it looks like that actually was installed with the Codespace, but you still may need to install it. Okay. Now, what we have to do is we have to tell this Codespace, or rather tell this notebook, what Python distribution to use that has ipykernel installed in it. On the desktop, you would use a virtual environment. But here in a Codespace, since each Codespace is going to be basically tied to a single project, I'm not using a virtual environment. So what I can do is I can, first of all, I need to save this. And I'll just save this as MemPy, just use the same name I used the other night, MemPy pandas. And then I need to select that distribution. Again, on the desktop, you would be getting a virtual environment. But however, if I select the kernel and then go to Python environments, and you'll see this one here, global env, that's the one that you're going to want. Now we can look at how Jupyter Notebook is going to work inside of GitHub Codespaces. So the idea is you have cells, and cells contain either code or markdown. For now, we're just going to be using code. So instead of the traditional programming workflow where you would open up a text editor, put code in a file, and then use the Python interpreter to execute that file, what we're going to do is we're going to execute these cells individually. So for example, I can say print hello world. Now, what I can do to execute this cell, there are several different ways that I can do it. The first one is by clicking this run icon over here, execute cell. I typically don't do that because I like to keep my hands on the keyboard, and moving back and forth between the keyboard and the mouse can be distracting and confusing. So instead, I'll use the keyboard. Now, the most common keyboard shortcut that I use to execute a cell is Shift-Enter. So Shift-Enter will execute the current cell, and it will move to the next cell. If there is no next cell, it will create a new cell as it did here. The second most common way that I will execute a cell is with Control-Enter. Control-Enter will execute the current cell, but notice it leaves that cell highlighted. So sometimes you'll want to execute a cell multiple times in succession, and this is how you would do that. Now there's a third way. It's one that I don't use as often, but still comes in handy, and that's Alt-Enter. Alt-Enter will execute the current cell, and then it will insert a new cell below it, thus shifting all existing cells down. So this is the cell that was created here earlier by Shift-Enter, and this is the one with Alt-Enter. And then to delete these unused cells, what I can do is or the one that's not needed, I can click this trash can icon over here. Okay, in the next video, we will get started with NumPy.